Hello and welcome to the Draft Digital live chat. This is Mark Leslie Lefay from Draft Digital, and I am honored to have with me in the virtual self-publishing insider studio, Chris Humphreys. Chris, welcome.
Hello, hello. How lovely to be here.
Well, it's great to chat with you again. I mean, normally it would be around this time of year that we might be seeing one another at a conference or two in the summertime, traveling. Not happening this year, though, is it?
No, alas not. Here I am in my little mountain eyrie on Salt Spring Island, and there you are in your studio in Hamilton. No, yes, Hamilton.
Waterloo, the Draft Digital office in Canada. I moved recently. So.
Oh, that's right.
So I want to go for people who are unfamiliar with C.C. Humphreys or Chris Humphreys, and I even want to talk about that author branding. Is you are a writer, but you're also a stage actor. You've been on television. I mean, I remember freaking out when I found out you were on the Fall Guy TV show with majors. Where did it all come for you? Was writing first? Was it the passion for acting? Where did this creative spirit come from?
Well, it's hard to sort of pin it down exactly. I mean, I'd always been a storyteller. I think that's what it comes down to. The essence is I'm a storyteller. And as a kid, I was that kid who in the group was saying, right, we are all this group of wandering knights, and we're attacking rescuing the maiden, killing the dragon. And I was that kid, and I would organize massive stories, and I did that all through my pre-teens. Then in my teens, I wasn't particularly academic at school, at least up at the age of about 16, when it suddenly all clicked. I hated the facts. I scraped every exam I could take. But I was always still thinking of stories. And at that time, I know I had intimations of wanting to be a writer, or wanting to formalize my own story process. But here's where life intervened, or the blood kicked in, maybe, because I come from a family of actors. All my grandparents were actors. My dad was an actor, and I grew up with that. My dad wasn't a terribly successful actor, though, so I didn't grow up in the theatre. I wasn't carted around backstage, and born in a laundry basket or anything like that. But I discovered acting actually quite late on. I hadn't thought of doing it, and then I got cast in the lead in the school play, and suddenly all those genes kicked in, and suddenly I decided, right, I want to be an actor. So acting became the first formal way of storytelling. Went to drama school, was quite successful straight away, actually. I mean, I was by many lights, a very successful actor for years. I've starred on, as you said, I've starred on stage in London's West End. I've played Hamlet, but also I did the Hollywood thing. I played apart from the Fall Guy, of course, which is very, very important. Guest on the episode of the Fall Guy. I played this Jewish zealot who became Rome's top gladiator in a biblical Roman epic called A.D. People can track it down if you care to see me in a loincloth over your breakfast. I don't know.
I've had enough of that when I've seen you in person.
Well, you are never out of my loincloth. So there was that. So I had a very successful career as an actor, and I'm still acting once in a while. If any producers are out there, hello, I'm available.
Well, you've done theater in the last year or so in the BC area, right?
I have, out here in British Columbia where I live. I actually did Samuel Beckett's famous one-man show Crap's Last Tape, which was an extraordinary journey, and I did that both where I live on Salt Spring Island and in Vancouver as well. So yeah, I mean, I'm still in the game as twere, but I'm really focusing on, my main creative outlet these days is the writing, and not only the writing of the books, but the now, I know we're going to come on and talk about that, but the marketing and the indie world and all that. So the writing happened, just to go back. I suppose I was getting a little, more than a little frustrated at being an actor. Because though I love acting, the business of acting is a bit of a problem because you're so out of control. You have to wait to be given permission to be creative. And that kid storyteller, was the one going, I want to tell my own stories. Particularly, I want to tell my own stories, not other people's stories. And all those ideas that I'd always had as a child, attack the fortress, save the maiden from the dragon, all that, I'd always kept having those ideas. And I started out in the sort of actor fashion. I wrote a play which won a competition. So suddenly and they gave me $500. So suddenly I'm a professional writer. I know. And then
a play was the first thing you wrote?
A play was the first thing I wrote, yeah.
Wow.
And my play, as I say, was put on, won a competition. My second play, I got money to write it, and that went on. But I'd had this idea for a novel. I didn't know it was a novel when it hit me, and it was I won't go into it. It was one of those weird things that happened in the gym. When you're thinking of something else, you're thinking of shoulder presses, and suddenly I'm thinking of the execution of Anne Boleyn, which is the way my mind tends to work. So,
well, who doesn't when they're shoulder pressing, right?
Well, indeed, long neck. I was thinking execution, long neck. Look at this neck. Ridiculously easy shot for the executioner. That's what I thought. How my brain worked. And anyway, I had this idea about the man who killed Anne Boleyn, the French executioner who was brought to England to do the deed, and he was a swordsman. He executed with a sword, which was the kind way of doing it. Who knew? And anyway, I had the idea of her six-fingered hand as well. She supposedly had can I do that on the screen? I don't know. There it is.
There you go. Oh my God, 6 fingers.
6 fingers. Who knew? Humphreys has a six-fingered hand. What if he took the hand? Because it was a symbol of witchcraft and all that. Anyway, that idea came. Cut a long story short, I thought about writing this story, and I thought about it, but I thought I'd never write a novel because, a novel was like a mountain, and a play was kind of a hill. So for 6 years, I basically thought about this, and every little while, a new idea, a new character, a new scenario, a new setting would pop in, and I started researching it. I said to myself, well, if I ever write that novel, which I probably won't, but if I do, I'll put everything into it I love. Like, it's obviously got to have a battle at sea between slave galleys. All books do, right? Really, at their heart. And so I pulled a book off a library shelf and read a book all about slave galleys. And anyway, 6 years of that. And finally, I thought, I just got to write it. Sat down and wrote it. Because it was in my head, I wrote it in 10 months. And it sold like that to Orion, the big British company. And I got an agent first, and she got it to them. And suddenly I had a 2-book deal. I had to write a sequel as well. And then that began the successful traditional career.
Cool. So things were working well. You actually got an agent right away. It was obviously a big enough deal to warrant an agent. Yeah.
Right? Well, I decided I went the agent route first, which I know is it's still a question that arises. Does one try to get an agent? Does one try to go direct to the publisher and all that stuff? Being an actor, I knew all about agents and thought, I want to go the agent route first. And I thought I'd aim for the top. So I went to Curtis Brown, which is one of the biggest in the world. And I didn't exactly stalk this agent. There was an element of stalking. But when I showed up at her doorstep, basically, that was the stalking part. But anyway, she took me on. And it was a great idea, the man who killed Anne Boleyn. And the French executioner was wild. It's my first sort of foray. And so I knew nothing. So, like a lot of first novels, I think authors, one fellow author did the same thing. He described it as like a storefront, and you cram all your goods into the window, So there's this novel, slave galleys, black masses in archbishops' dungeons, all sorts of stuff. So it's wild. And funnily enough, that'll play into what we talked about, because I've just got the rights back to that in Canada and the US. So that book will be coming out again, my very first novel, because it's one of those books that is effectively timeless. So,
and that was Plague, right?
Sorry, that was French Executioner.
Oh, the French Executioner. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm still harping back to that one. Yeah, and that was, which I wrote and published, 18 years ago, I think it was published.
Wow.
So that was my first traditional novel. And then, here I am 18 novels later.
So you were actually earning a respectable full-time income as a traditionally published author, which is rare in and of itself.
Yeah, I was earning a good living. I wasn't, Tom Clancy or James Patterson, but I was earning a living wage, basically, and which was amazing. to me to be, because like so many people, I dreamt of being a novelist for so long, and thought I'll never do it. Which is now actually what I teach. I teach workshops. I'm teaching at Willamette Writers Festival. If anyone is interested in taking my 3-day historical fiction workshop, you can sign up to Willamette in Portland, Oregon. I'm doing it online, of course. And I'm teaching, 3-day masterclass in historical fiction. But I basically teach process, getting past that, oh, I can't do it, I'll never do it, to the little steps, the small steps one takes in order to create a novel. What was the question? I've got off on that.
It was just that, I think when I met you, you were beginning the journey of hybrid author, but prior to that, again, you were making a respectable income, just selling writing manuscripts, selling them to different publishers, obviously, right?
Well, I was with Hachette for years because they own Orion in the UK. But then I also had leapt sideways into a different genre. I started writing young adult fiction, and was writing that for Knopf, in New York. I mean, possibly one of the best publishers in the world. And then I went back and forth between the Random Penguin and Hachette. And then ended up migrating to Doubleday, which is part of Random House, for Plague and Fire. And yes, I mean the business, as you know, Mark, very well indeed, because you've got your finger on the pulse so well, has changed enormously. And 5, 6, 7 years ago, I got a living wage advance for Plague and Fire. And then 6 years later, when I was going after another traditional advance, and this time writing adult fantasy, because my agent had suggested a switch from historical fiction into adult fantasy, as one does. and so I where is the book? Oh, here it is. This is the book Smoke in the Glass. Is this here? I know we need to talk about. Oh, I keep moving the wrong way. There we go. And so I signed up to write that for Gollancz, a venerable old fantasy house and part of Hachette, my old house. And but by this time, the business had changed entirely. And so I basically effectively got 1/5 of the advance I'd got 7 years before. And well below living wage, so minimum wage, really. I mean, below minimum wage, well below it. And so that really was the prompting to, kind of like being an actor who can't rely on people giving him jobs. I was suddenly a writer who couldn't rely on a publisher to keep me going, to pay me a living wage. So that's when I began that journey, that sort of, which is when you and I first met, I think, when I was starting out on that and going, oh, you know all about this, Mark, tell me more. About the what is effectively the hybrid model now, in that I am still traditionally published. Smoke in the Glass that is coming out in the US on August the 4th. It's been in Canada and the UK for a while now, but and I'm just doing the audio book, which I know you want to talk about a bit, of the second book in that series, which is called The Coming of the Dark. That book is coming out in the UK and Canada in the fall, and the US sometime in the spring, I think. And then I've just finished the first draft of the third book, which will conclude that trilogy, which is called the Immortals Blood Trilogy.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So you've sold the rights to some of these books to publishers, or split territory rights, because obviously there's an imprint in the UK that's releasing it at a different time from Canada and the US. Is that a way that an agent helps an author earn more money, the splitting rights like that, just in traditional publishing?
It's not actually split, no. That's the other thing these days, in that the agent, the part of the agent's buzz and job was to sell all those different territories and make you lots of different money. But now publishers almost universally demand world rights.
Right.
And keeping any rights at all is really hard. They want everything. And so I'm very loath to give everything, so I always retain film rights, for example.
Right.
I try to retain audio rights. In this case, I couldn't in Smoke in the Glass. But what I did,
they hired you to narrate the book, which is so you get the advance as a writer, but then you also get paid as a narrator. Like that's a beautiful position to be in. This
is true, and I do usually put that into the contract. And again, they're a bit funny about it, but normally, if an author can read their book, if they have I mean, I'm trained as a but even it's always good. It's quite kudos for them, and it helps with their sales if it's written and read by. So I do try to include that, first refusal or whatever on Narrator. So I've always, and that's something else I'm doing in the indie world now. I'm recording the books that have never been recorded before, and I'm starting to get those out there as well.
Okay. Well, I do know, I think the last time I saw you in person, at least in the Toronto area, is you were launching Chasing the Wind. And Chasing the Wind was one that, was it only Canadian rights or only North American rights? And then you maintained the rest of the world?
Canadian rights only. And,
okay.
And yes, I got the rest of the world. And so that, Chasing the Wind, was my first indie venture. Because that's the book I thought, well, it hasn't, I couldn't believe it. I wrote an American heroine, she's a 1930s aviatrix, she's this kick-ass, fun gal, Roxy, who gets involved in all these amazing adventures. And I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll appeal to the American market and make it her American. And imagining, the $1 million advance from Random House in the US. No, they didn't even buy it. No one bought it. So that's why I thought, well, I'll publish it there. So that's what I did. And that began my indie journey, really. I got the cover, got a great cover. I got a better cover, actually.
Yeah, I think your cover has a similar feel, but I actually like it more than this is the traditionally published version from Random House Canada. But then you have a very a different take on Roxy.
I've got a photograph of an aviatrix actually, and she's great. And it's because I like the Canadian cover in one way, because Roxy, as I say in the book, does clean up nice, but but that girl is there. She's the glam girl, as opposed to Roxy, who's tough. She's a tough flyer. She's a gun runner. She's all about the money, and she ends up as a thief, of course. So that was, and that's, I think, part of the buzz of one of the buzzes of indie publishing, is that you do control that side of it. You can play with covers and get something, because even though I always have input on my traditional covers, I don't have final say.
Right, that's true. So that was your first foray into indie publishing, that sort of hybrid approach where they managed it in Canada, but you had the rights everywhere else.
Correct. But with the audio book, of course, then I was approached by Tantor, who are a big audio book publisher. And so I was able to sell the rights to them separately. And also narrate, and that's the one I narrate, because I narrate that in an American accent. It's an American thing, and I grew up in California till I was 7 years old, so I still have the American accent as well.
Well, I'm gonna take a diversion there, because I know I have actually hired you to do some of my short fiction projects through, Find Away Voices, etc. And I remember that was one of the things, is when I gave you the notes on what I wanted done, because there were, I think, 3 separate stories. I think we sort of had a discussion saying, well, I'll do this one with a British accent. I'll do this one with an American accent, right? I think that was the perspective.
Absolutely. No, there were your stories were terrific, actually, but I thought the one particular one just didn't sound right. It was talking about high school and that sort of stuff. So yeah, I did that. Chose to do that with an American accent. It's nice to be able to switch around. I mean, I've always been pretty good with accents, and I used to do cartoons quite a bit and have to, vary those up. So, but yes, so that's the sort of back and forth of the narrator world. Yeah.
So you must have, I mean, prior to when you were doing Tantor or any of the places that commissioned you, they would send you to a studio no, you were doing it all at home?
Home studio.
Even before COVID-19?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. No, that was the big another of the big sort of indie investments I made, and that was sort of a hybrid between acting and writing, because I wanted to be I wanted to gig. I wanted to get narrator gigs as well,
Right.
to earn some money. So I set up my home studio, which is a very grand name for a duvet fort. Lots of soft furnishings, but I paid money for a really good mic. I paid money for what's called a mud guard, which is like a baffle thing, and I bought an amazing system, because I tried out various ones, and I know you record. I'd be interested to chat to you about that sometime. But I tried these different ones that are out there, and they were all just a bit too tech for me. I'm not a particularly tech person, as you know.
Right.
And then I found this amazing system. I will blow their trumpets, from Denmark, and bizarrely, considering Chasing the Wind ends up on the Hindenburg, this system's called Hindenburg. And it started out it started out for journalists making podcasts and stuff, but they adapted it for narrators. It is so user friendly, and it has amazing, I mean, I'll just say one thing. I got my best voice from a previous ones that I book Fire, actually, I think it was, that I recorded in the studio in Oxford in England. They sent me a clip of that. I put that into Hindenburg as my profile. So that's Chris Best. So anything I record, I click on that profile and it uploads my best studio voice to that track.
Really?
Yeah, so it's great. So it's like I've got an engineer there who's going, oh, he modulates like this or whatever, and then it has all these different filters, compression, and noise reduction and stuff. So even a non-techie like me can manage it. Yeah, I'm recording. I'll finish with you and go straight down to the studio today, and finish off Coming of the Dark.
So this is a home studio where you've purchased the equipment. Now this is just software that runs on a Mac or a PC. It's not like extra hardware, like you've got like a mixing board or any of those things.
No mixing board. I've got the interface, and everyone know what that's called, the M&M track thing. What's it called? The DAW, is it? Is that the DAW? Anyway, it's, tech man, right? But so I plug that into my computer, and so that runs through there. But that's the only piece of tech, and I set the level on that 2 years ago, and I've never touched it since. I just plug it in. I don't do anything else, which suits me. And then I just bring up Hindenburg on my Mac here, where I'm talking to you now, and pull up a track. I upload the EPUB to go on my monitor up above me. So my recording thing's down here, my mic's here, my monitor's there, and I'm reading through. And any mistake, I just rewind, goes back to it, start again.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. So in terms of as a voice actor, you're listed on a bunch of different sites, like through ACX, through Findaway Voices. Are there other places where people can find you to figure out how they could hire you?
They could always just email me at my website, of course. There you go. And though I chatted with you before, that the contact is still a bit of a work in progress there, but there's an email you can get me.
So this is at authorchrisHumphreys.com as the website.
Yeah, is the website, and Chris at authorchrisHumphreys.com is the email. So if anyone wants to get in touch with me, I will be putting up the whole landing page and all that sort of stuff. But the website is literally hot off the press. But yeah, so no, I am registered with Findaway. I am with ACX. I audition periodically for ACX. They put up auditions and you just drop things in there. So yeah. I mean, I'm a gigging narrator, so I'm around. It's fun. I really enjoy doing it. It's good to do my own stuff, obviously, because I kind of hear my own voice. But it's great to do for other people as well, like you. And I did this wonderful book called Edge of Living for a writer in England. So it's different form of it sort of marries my two crafts, the writing and the acting.
So how do you divide up your time in terms of priorities? Because I know you have a lot of, books just live now, new ones coming out, and like they're in all the various stages of production. But then you also have audio projects. How do you divide up your day? Is, like you said, in the afternoon, is that for recording, in the morning is writing, or is there any set schedule?
I wish I was that organized, Mark. No, it's a sort of need to do basis is how I operate in my life and in my in my work as well. Right now, like 2 weeks ago, I'd have said, yeah, it's all about writing, because I was trying to finish the first draft of this book, so that's all I was doing. Then I finished the first draft of that book and have put it aside for a little bit. I don't normally do that, actually. Some writers say, oh yeah, put it in a bottom drawer for 6 months. I don't do that. I normally just dive straight in. But I really wanted to then get my website set up. So I was learning all that tech stuff. Get the books ready for indie publication, which I'm going to be bringing out, because I'm bringing out I got the rights back. I don't know if you want to talk more about that, but I got the rights back to my YA books, my young adult books, fantasy books that I wrote for Knopf back in the day. And not only that, so I wrote one for Knopf, Hunt of the Unicorn. Then I wrote one for Doubleday in Toronto, Hunt of the Dragon. And then I've written a third book, brand new, to conclude that trilogy. And that's my sort of next big indie launch.
And that one was never sold to a publisher. That was just book 3. And then by the time you finish book 3, all that other stuff kind of you got all the rights back, right?
Yeah, I got all the rights back. Yeah, I've got all the rights back to all my young adult books. And also, I'm you mentioned branding a little earlier, CC Humphreys and Chris Humphreys. I am trying to do a sort of fairly major rebranding in terms of CC Humphreys is the historical fiction brand. Chris Humphreys is the fantasy brand. I'm not doing YA and adult anymore, because so many adults read my Hunt of the Unicorn duology, as it was, and the Runestone Saga, and they're aimed at everyone, really. So I'm trying to rebrand myself as just an author, and if you kind of like the way I tell a story, then hop on. And if it's about a serial killer in 17th century London during the Great Plague, which is the novel that's out right now, or it's it's about a unicorn in a fantasy realm fighting a dragon, then you're still going to get a good ride, I think. And there will be some people who go, oh, I never read fantasy, I never read historical fiction, whatever. But I'm hoping that there are authors like David Mitchell, for example. He writes across all these genres: speculative, historical. He just brought out a book about a 1960s prog rock band. And people will just read him because he's a great writer. And I'm hoping that people will read me because they enjoy my style of writing.
So does that mean that Chris Humphreys is still going to be for your fantasy, and CC Humphreys is the more historical stuff? So you're doing that for your fans to say, if you're into this style, stick with that?
Well, what I'm hoping to do, I might fall flat here, but I'm hoping to encourage them to read across genres.
Right.
But yes, I am separating out, and in terms of Chris Humphreys is going to be my fantasy name, and my UK publishers wanted that for this last series, Smoke in the Glass, over the Immortals Blood series, so starting with Smoke in the Glass. They said, that people will get confused with your CC Humphreys output. So yeah, but basically, I'm hoping people will just go, oh yeah, that's Chris Humphreys is CC Humphreys, and I often bill myself as Chris CC Humphreys. So.
Oh, there you go. Cool. So I have to ask, because we're in time of plague right now, worldwide pandemic, and I'm just popping up the cover for Plague: Murder Has a New Friend. That was one of the ones you've got the rights back, and you re-released that just recently.
Well, yeah, it actually was one of the first ones I played with. I released it a couple of years ago when I got the American rights to it. So I haven't got world rights to that. Really, I've only got the rights to Plague in the US.
Okay.
So because it's still published traditionally in Canada by and the UK by Penguin Random House. And they did really well with it in Canada. They didn't do so well with it in the UK. Don't get me started on why that happened. So I released it a couple of years ago in the US, and it did pretty well. Sold a couple of thousand copies. But then I thought, well, I don't want to. I'm not a I don't want to be a plague profiteer, but I am a historical fiction writer, and people read historical fiction partly to consider other times that are similar to ours and people how they reacted. So I thought, well, I'll bring plague out again. I'll push it again a bit. So if there are some people who go, I don't want to read. I only want to read about Goldilocks and sheep. But there are other people who go, that's what I need to get my head around a bit more in a fictional way about what's going on in the world and how different people believed in it and handled it. And so I thought, right, I'll put it out there again. And it's sold a lot. Again, it's probably, it's still selling regularly. It's getting a lot of KU reads as well. Wow. I'm not sure if there's an audio book, and I'm not sure, I don't control that, so I don't know how the sales are on that.
So how does that? Yeah, so you can see some stats for some territories based on your rights, but then you get an annual, a biannual, a quarterly report on how do those come in?
Gosh, I can't remember the last time I saw a report on Plague audio book. Actually, that's a good point. I should check that out, shouldn't I? Yeah, I don't know. No, yeah. So that is how it works. I mean, of course, I'm on KDP every day checking out my stats and stuff. I sold 6 copies this morning of Plague. So it's on a Kindle countdown right now for those who want to get it for only $2.99. Got that plug-in. But yeah. That is, I think, part of the problem, in that, of course, I'd like to know everything about all my books, because that's the way you start to build up the stats. You start to see which way things are going. Right. And I don't know that. But I did just get the North American rights back to my first 5 novels, which is great. So that'll include French Executioner and the Jack Absolute trilogy. So that will be... which people are always nagging me about. When are you writing more Jack Absolute? Well, I'd love to. This is what I most want to write, but I've got all these things, So Plague and Fire's out in the US as well, of course, the sequel to Plague, and that is also selling pretty well. I think that there has been, people finish Plague and go, oh, what's next?
So speaking of Jack Absolute, I think one of the first times I had the pleasure of seeing you do a reading in public, and I've seen a number of readings, including one that you did for Chasing the Wind. Absolute wonderful. I remember when you did the reading. I think this was in Calgary when Words Collide. You had done the reading for Jack Absolute, and it was a humorous scene, and all I remember is just you had the audience in the palm of your hand. And so one of the things I'm wondering if there are any tips you can offer other writers who may not be, I mean, obviously you're a trained stage and film actor. But, I mean, so obviously you've incorporated some of that into the dramatic performance that you do. But what are some things that you think would be helpful for an author who's maybe not as confident or not as comfortable doing a reading? What do you recommend that they check out or try?
Well, 2 things. One is a mental thing, and one's a physical thing. I would say, just off the top of my head, the mental thing is, and this is something you learn as an actor as well, and it takes some time to learn it often, is that when you walk into a room for an audition, they are hoping that you are going to be it. They're not going, oh, I can't wait to mark this person down. I can't wait to see this person fail miserably in front of me. They're going, please walk in and win this job. So I think if you transfer that to an audience, they don't want to see you up there being all nervous and you might be, but what they want is for you to succeed. They want to hear your story so much. They love you already. Because you're an author and you're doing this thing. So that's a good way of thinking about them. They're an audience of friends. They're not an audience of judges.
Okay.
I think that's a good thing to remember. Some people take it further and say, think of the audience as all being naked. But I don't think that would be helpful to me at all.
I'd be too distracted trying to figure.
Very distracted, very distracted. No, but thinking of them as friends, I think, is a good thing. The physical thing is just breathe. it's amazing how people get very constricted, in their voice, and they sort of, and look up, make contact, make eye contact, smile. Smiling, actually opens the face up. We've seen teachers are always teaching you to smile because it opens the face. So smiling is good, breathing is good. Knowing that the people out there are really wanting you to succeed is also good. Those would be the simplest of tips I'd give people.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So, what are so Hunt of the Unicorn that's coming out soon, or is that up for pre-order already?
It was, then I watched Dave Chesson's video on pre-orders and took it down from pre-order. Don't pre-order, he says. So I'm bringing those out next. I'm actually doing an interesting collaboration with a small press in Victoria, British Columbia, called Friesen Press. I mean, they're small, but they're quite big. They publish a lot of stuff, really high-end stuff. And in exchange for some blog posts, they're basically giving me the print editions for free. They're producing them and all that, and they will be available to order. I retained the EPUB rights because that's where I, as you know, make most of my money and where I can really play the game. Do the countdowns, do the specials, do the giveaways, do all those things that one needs to do. So, but yes, so Hunt of the Unicorn will be out end of August. August 25th, I think I've got it down for. And then and Hunt of the Dragon, I'm going to bring out simultaneously, I've decided.
Oh, so the entire trilogy will then be available? I'm going to bring out the third book, Hunt of the Shapeshifters, it's called, about a month later, I think. Oh, okay. And then that's when are you planning on any like digital box sets as well, like the full Monty?
I will definitely do that. Yes, there's a digital box set of Plague and Fire. So yes, I will certainly do that. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. So how important then is, I mean, there was a time, and this doesn't include your acting, but there was a time when the income was coming from one or two publishers, traditionally published, and that was the majority of your income as a writer. Yep. Or all of your income as a writer. Now your income as a creative, as a writer, comes from publishers, multiple different publishers that you still have relationships with. Comes from audio book channels, whether you've been commissioned to be a narrator or their royalties for stuff, or advances, etc. And then you've got the indie, right? All of these different, depending on the territories and stuff like that. How important is that diversity in income sources compared to the Chris who was wondering, oh my God, my advance was 1/5 of what it used to be?
Well, one does what one needs to do to survive, right? I mean, it's at the moment the sales of Plague have really saved my financial bacon, this last few months. And I hadn't really thought of putting it back out there. Then I realized that people did want to read about such things, some people, and got it out there. And because it sold well, that's kept me going. I mean, it's still, as I say, selling quite well. And I was surprised at how much, I thought you make nothing from KU, but actually you do quite well from KU. If it's odd though how KU works, because I look down sometimes and I see the reads, that you see a column on your reports page, and it'll tootle along at sort of 500, 700 for a while, and then 2 days ago 1,700 pages read. It's always, I mean, you probably know more about why that happens than others, but so that that all adds up. So yes, and the audio, I mean, I'm recording recording the second book in the fantasy trilogy now, and that's a nice paycheck coming to me in about 2 weeks' time. So it's that world, and it's both. I mean, Mark, to be honest, if they were still giving me fat advances, and all that was required of me to do was to show up at a launch party and drink warm Chardonnay, I would do it. I would still be there doing that. But that is not the world anymore. And so what do? Do you call up, curl up in a ball and give up? No, I've got stories to tell still. I've got lots of stories. I've got two other books that are waiting to go.
Right.
One is a modern thriller, actually, which I'd love to get out there, and I'm thinking of doing that as an audio exclusive to start with, actually, because I think it would work really well. It's called One London Day, and it's about a serial, well, not a serial, a hitman actually, and a hit, and the repercussions of that. It's kind of like this multiple narrator story. Very TV, if any producers are out there. You know, I think my focus in the next little while is going to be a little less on the writing and more on, I'd like to get all my books up there. You know, I've got this big backlist, and if each of them can be up there and earning a little bit of money every month, that's going to really help towards making my nut every month, you know.
Oh, that's fantastic. Is that then something that's part of the long-term plan, is as the rights to some of those books come back, or as you actually have the time to write the other books? Is that just part of the long-term strategy then?
Definitely, that's definitely part of the long-term strategy. Yes, I want to you know, get them out in all the necessary forms as well. You know, I'll do for some of them I'll do ebook and POD. Like Plague is available on print on demand, and actually it's been selling quite well. Obviously, some book clubs have picked it up because I'll suddenly get a spike of 10 copies sold or whatever, which is always great. And you know, especially now, it's interesting. Someone said to me yesterday, this bizarre little side story. I live on Salt Spring Island, you know, quite a small island, but quite a popular island for tourists. And in British Columbia, we're allowing British Columbian tourists to come here. No one else, stay away, all of you Ontarianians. But British Columbian tourists. And someone wrote to me on my website saying, oh my goodness, I just finished reading Plague while camping in Ruckle Park. And I read the author's note and realized you live here. Is there any chance you could sign my copy? So I met her and signed the copy, like 300 yards from where I wrote the book. She was blown away by that.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to get them all out there in the different forms. I'm going to do the audiobooks for the ones that haven't been done yet. I've done an audiobook for Hunter the Unicorn already. And that's already up, actually. It takes a bit of time to get up, but I put that up on Find Away Voices. And then that'll come out simultaneously with the ebook of that and the print book, which Friesen Press are doing. So yes, that's all. I sound terribly organized. I'm really not. I feel like, oh my God, I suppose I am doing it. I just tend to, like, I had this panic this morning about no landing page on my website. No one can sign up while they watch this video. Oh well.
That's okay. They can still contact you by email and get in contact with you.
Indeed,
and you'll show up and sign a copy for them too.
I will sign a copy at Fulford Harbour. Anyone who comes to Salisbury, as long as you're from Provence and not from America. Sorry, I mean I love you, but you can't come here yet.
All right, so we're just getting close to wrapping up. I wanted to go back and see if we can reflect on any potential things that you've learned in your author journey that you think might be valuable or useful for other folks that they can glean from this Chris Humphreys wisdom.
The wisdom. Well, you know, I'm a practitioner. I'm a story. As I said right at the beginning of this, I'm a storyteller. And so many people are, you know, and the people who are setting out, what holds them back so often, what held me back for years, was not understanding that writing is a process. Thinking it's that cliche, obviously, but it's thinking it's a destination, you know, the book published, rather than a journey you take to it. So when I teach, which I'm again going to be teaching a bit next weekend at Willamette, in a much curtailed version, I teach a workshop called The Mountain, the novel as a series of ascents. And it basically is the premise that, you know, if you think like I did, having written a play, it's a hill, but a novel's a mountain, I'll never climb it. If you think about trying to get to the top of the mountain, you'll never get there. But if you're standing at the base of a mountain and you look over there and there's a litof finger hole and you put your finger in, you get off the ground. That's the first sentence you write. And thinking of it as a process, thinking of the first draft as one of the big rules I have is never show your first draft to anyone. It's only you. It's a free climb up that mountain. You don't even know the story yet. The characters are going to tell you the story. Things are going to happen. You're going to go, and then you're going to get to the top of the mountain and you have a first draft written. And you're going to look down and go, why did I go there? Or really should have gone over there. Or that was an amazing route to choose. You know, everything is used as part of that process. And then the second climb up the mountain, you set a path for your ideal reader, your editor, or someone who's reading a book for the first time to follow. And then they get to the top of the mountain with you and they look down and go, why did you go there? Why did you know, and give you the advice you need to write that third draft, to take that third climb up the mountain. So process is the key, and being really good with yourself, because anything you write is going to be useful. I don't believe in writer's block. I think there's always something you can be doing in terms of developing a character or sketching an idea, or yeah. So that would be my tip: process.
Awesome. Well, Chris, thank you so much. Let's just remind people where they can find out more about you and check out all the cool stuff you're up to.
That is where I live now, authorchrisHumphreys.com. Yeah.
Great. Well, Chris, thank you so much for hanging out with me here today.
Mark, thank you so much for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. I just wish we both had a beer in our hands. But
maybe later on we will.
Maybe. Well, it's all right. You can drink. It's lunchtime there. It's still after breakfast here. So
excellent. Thanks, Chris.
Cheers, Mark. Take care. Lots. All the best.